The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has hit out at the government's changes to the inheritance tax rates for farms.
In an exclusive interview with GB News, he's called the changes absolutely mad.
It's a really, really dumb thing to do. You know, we are struggling. I mean,
not the protest. I'm assuming the inheritance.
No, the inheritance tax thing. You know, it is. We're struggling to keep people on the land to make sure that farmers are incentivised to hand over their business to their descendants. I think it's mad. It's absolutely mad. I don't know why they've done it.
And those comments come ahead of two planned protests in Westminster next week. Over 10,000 farmers are expected to turn up.
Well, our reporter Anna Riley has been speaking to a farmer in East Yorkshire who could be left paying a £600,000 inheritance tax bill under the new changes.
Farming is a family affair for Steve Ridsdale. He lives on this 260-acre farm in East Yorkshire with his wife and son. It's owned by his 81-year-old father, Terry. When he passes the farm on, the changes to agricultural relief means that Steve will face an inheritance tax bill of up to £600,000.
We've got 10 years to pay that tax, but if the farm doesn't make enough margin to pay the tax, so we would have to sell. I'm not sleeping. I feel like I've worked all my life and everything I've ever earned is going to have to go on tax because of my dad's age and because we're unlikely to be able to get life insurance for him. And if we can get life insurance, the premium will be horrendous.
The farm's been in the family for generations, but now owner Terry Ridsdale fears for its future.
We came here in 1960 and it's been our lifetime looking after stock, our own cattle and now these bed and breakfast ones. And working the land. It could all go now with this new budget. It's a nice life, really, that's working outside all the time. But will the younger generation want to continue? My grandchildren? Doubtful.
Along with working on the farm, Steve's the chair of the British Farming Union. He says farmers will take action if the government doesn't rethink changes to inheritance tax.
Some of them are saying, well, we're going to have to push back at this and we're not going to cooperate. And they're starting to say, well, are we going to take the sewage sludge? Something like 85% of all the sewage solids go back to farmland. So farmers are saying, well, if you're not going to help us, we're not going to help you. And I can see that that is only going to get worse, to be honest, because, it's our livelihoods.
The Prime Minister said that the budget has put £5 billion into farming over the next 2 years. Keir Starmer has also stressed that the vast majority of farmers won't be affected by changes to inheritance tax. But this is cold comfort to farmers like Steve, who risk losing their livelihoods. Anna Riley, GB News.
Let's cross live now to Emily Carver. Emily's on a farm in Exmoor in North Devon. Tell us more, Emily.
Good morning, Eamon and Isabel. Yes, I've been up at the crack of dawn, or indeed before the crack of dawn, to get here to this beautiful 160-acre farm in Devon in the southwest of England. And I am joined by this lovely bunch of heifers, very beautiful. I'm here for their breakfast time. But I'm also going to speak to James Wright, who is the farmer here. James, thank you very much indeed. Now, I want to, of course, know how these tax changes are going to impact you and other farmers in the area. But also, we're here to find out what a day in the life of a farmer is actually like. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not used to being in a farm. I don't know what graft goes into a day in the farm. It does look a bit tricky. Tell me, what are we going to be doing today?
Well, we're going to go feed the cows in a minute, and then we're going to go and scrape up some poo, and then we go and find the sheep. And I think we're going to go get some eggs for our breakfast as well.
Eggs for breakfast, fantastic stuff. Now, what is the hardest thing about being a farmer?
It's just the uncertainty. I mean, we're here today and it's lovely weather, or it will be in a little bit, but it could be pouring with rain. Every day is different, and I think that's what makes it difficult.
And this is a 160-acre farm. How do you look after so much land?
Well, you get up very early in the morning and you go to bed quite late, and you rely on the goodwill of neighbours, probably is the best way to describe it.
And just a quick question, what's your favourite animal in your farm?
Oh, it's got to be the cows.
It's got to be the cows. I think I agree. So yes, we're going to be here all morning, all afternoon, all day, bringing you a GB News farming special to try and understand the voices in our rural communities and how these tax changes might impact them and their future for generations to come. Back to you.
Hosted Emily, thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's get the thoughts in the studio of the former Labour Minister for Europe, Denis McShane. Look, this is being described by many as a divisive and nasty tax move by the Chancellor, who has very little understanding of the countryside. I mean, how can you defend it when we're talking about something like I can't remember what my stat was now, I've lost it. Never mind. Anyway, how could you defend it? And I'll come back to that.
First point is, everyone gets obsessed with the headline budget statement by the Chancellor. I sat through 18 of them. And then when I was in opposition, when the Tories were running the show, I was on the Finance Committee, which was the Committee of the House of Commons, all members, all parties represented, and they go through the budget line by line by line by line, and there can be changes. Now, I've just checked this British Farmers Union, the chap you had on earlier. You can't find any details about it, how many members it's got, what it does. There's a National Farmers Union with 55,000 members. That's the representative body, and it's very upset. All I'd say is there are many people, when I die, and it's not that far off, my inheritance tax will be much, much greater.
Yes, they do get better leniency, fair enough. But I mean, what's going to happen to the countryside if we lose this 5 million acres of British countryside? We're hearing from the voice of farmers, their descendants simply cannot afford the tax bill.
I do remember them marching not far from where I live in Pimlico against the fox hunting ban. And they said it was dreadful, and the Range Rovers were parked up and they got out of their Gucci's and put on wellies. Not gentlemen like that, and said this is the end of farming. They opposed the national minimum wage. They said nothing about Brexit, though that has done huge damage. They can't hire now farm workers as once they did, and they're not part of the EU subsidy scheme, and the British government, any government, is much meaner than the European Union is. So to go back to the basics, you're husband and wife, both in their name, that's 2 million exempt from tax. And then if your house is also part of the farm, and you put that into the package, that's another $1 million that's exempt from inheritance tax. Then you've got 10 years to pay it. I mean, I know a lot of small businessmen who would love to have 10 years in which they could pay off the tax they owe. So I'm all for looking at it and finding certain analysis, but let's just stop. I mean, Jim, the guy who runs Dyson, well, I've forgotten his name.
James Dyson.
He buys, invented Dyson, he buys 30,000 acres of farm just for tax reasons.
No, but I think, and this is a point that Jeremy Clarkson has been really, really strong on, is that this policy is actually not going after those super wealthy landowners like him, like James Dyson, who've been using this as a loophole to pass on their huge wealth to their children without having to pay tax. Actually, what it's going to do is affect those farmers in the middle who have frankly been completely shafted and whose descendants cannot afford the sort of bill that this is going to be imposing on them. And it's all just to raise $520 million a year by 2030. Which is peanuts.
No, on that point, but I completely agree with you that it's very funny to have Boris Johnson there. He bequeathed, the disaster of the British economy, the disaster of Liz Truss, and the fact there's no money coming into the coffers. And I don't quite know what Labour's meant to do. We want hospitals, don't we? Theresa May took 20,000 police off the streets when she was Home Secretary. We need them back.
But we also need food, and we also need farmers to be thriving and to be viable.
All of those things, but everybody, I mean, I'm sure I'd thrive if I didn't pay the tax that I pay, or thrive a bit better, leave a bit more for my children, have more to give my children now. So there are a lot of other experts on the other side of the equation. I mean, I'm following this not as an expert. I'm a townie, I grew up in London, I'm a Londoner, but experts, including farmers, who say, look, some of this has been got up. It's perfectly reasonable. It used to be trade unions. Do you remember when they used to dictate to governments? Now it seems to be farmers. I'm sure they're completely sincere, and good luck with their march and their protest.
But what's perfectly reasonable about diminishing a business, which is a farm and a family business, and supervising over the fact that these are going to go to big multinational companies, farms are going to get bigger and bigger, and the family aspect of it goes out? Who does it benefit whittling down a family farm?
Oh, I would love the assumption that that will happen, but there seems to be an awful lot of people who want to buy agricultural land, and there are people who do want to be farmers. I mean, it's a hard life, indeed, but it is out in the open air, and you have a secured income. And I mean, frankly, I want to see more shops at our high streets, but nobody's saying to Tesco's and Sainsbury's, you have destroyed high street shopping by forcing down prices, by relocating way outside of town, so you have to use gas-guzzling cars to get there to do your shopping. Now, maybe we could do some tax breaks that help small shopkeepers. That would be a nice change, wouldn't it?